What's the pettiest revenge you've ever seen? My little brother's girl is super self-centered and obnoxious. A couple months ago, they came to stay at my place for the weekend. When they left, she forgot her clothes and toiletries because she left them sprawled all over my bathroom. About a week later, she and my brother moved into an apartment together. After he paid for the moving truck, deposit, and utilities, she cheated on him with her ex and kicked him out of the apartment. This left him broke, homeless, and heartbroken. In the days after the breakup, she kept calling and emailing him several times per day, demanding that he ask me to ship her clothes and toiletries back to her. I mean, it's really important. It's my North Face. My brother called and pleaded with me to ship them to her so she would stop having a reason to contact him. Being the loving sister that I am, I gathered up the really important North Face sweatshirt, shorts, underwear, shampoo, conditioner, soap, and razor. I folded everything nicely. I then wrote a nice note apologizing for taking so long to mail them to her and letting her know that I hope all is well. The note was written in permanent marker, and the paper happened to be resting on the really important North Face when I wrote it. Unfortunately, the ink bled straight through the paper and onto the shirt. Also unfortunately, the shampoo, soap, and conditioner caps were not tightly secured on their bottles, and the contents leaked out all over the clothes, further spreading the ink. The most unfortunate result, though, was that her razor didn't have any sort of protective cap or container and left little slashes all over the front of the really important North Face. She received the package, and my brother never heard from her again. What's the most unhinged revenge you've ever gotten? When I was just out of middle school and my sister was still in elementary, my dad met his third wife at the only gas station in our town. They soon moved in together, and my dad abandoned us in our basement apartment to live on a shanty houseboat with her. He would show up every other week and give me $40 for groceries. Eventually, someone figured out the situation and called my mom. We went to live with her, which was, believe it or not, worse. My dad and his shanty wife got married in 1991. Not long after, she called me and told me my dad's brain tumor had returned and that he couldn't handle the stress of being around us. That the only people he could bear to be around was her, and her son, Shorty, who was my age. When I called my dad to ask if this was true, he said it wasn't, and he just couldn't believe that she would say that to begin with. That was our last conversation for many years. In the meanwhile, I worked my way through college, living in my car from time to time. My dad and I were no contact, but I heard from family that he'd bought a house and put his son through some vocational classes. When my grandmother died, Shorty and shanty wife showed up in a truck and took all the furniture and anything else that wasn't tied down or already gone. Eventually, I went no contact with my dad's side of the family. I struggled for years, decades really, but I made it. And I have a great job and a good family now. The best revenge is living well, right? 2 years ago, I got a call from my dad's brother, Alan. He told me my dad was in a nursing home in another state and I needed to go see him because he needed my help. Shorty had ghosted him. The nursing home, coincidentally, was about 20 minutes from my house. And I saw an opportunity and I went. The reunion was underwhelming. I didn't want to make amends, but I did want to hear how he wound up dumped and all alone in another state. And it was a really, really good story. Shanty wife got lung cancer and put my dad in a nursing home before she died in 2017. She suffered, and I was happy to hear it. Shorty became his power of attorney when she died, and had been visiting my dad, living in my dad's house with his 2 children, and taking care of my dad's affairs since his mom died. But now he was MIA, and my dad was worried about him. He asked me to drive the hour and a half to his house to check on everything. That's all he wanted. He never even asked me how I had been. I agreed to go, I think out of morbid curiosity. I'd never even been to my dad's house. I did want to see where he lived with his real family for 30 years. I wanted to see what could have been my life. It was 50 shades of awful. The grass hadn't been cut all summer. You couldn't get to the front door through the overgrowth. There were 3 pickup trucks in the yard, 2 were full of trash. Cabs and beds and back seats, just trash. Mail, clothes, paper, shoes, garbage bags. I couldn't understand it. My dad's handicapped modified SUV was on 4 flats and full of garbage, too. I didn't have a key, so I just walked around. From what windows I could look through, the inside was in shambles and hoarded to hell. On the front and carport doors were dozens of notices from the city that they were going to condemn the place. The carport was also hoarded. Boxes and boxes stacked on each other, most rotting from the rain. The yard was full of garbage. Broken Christmas ornaments, more shoes, rusted tools, and old toys. There was a letter in the mailbox notifying him that since the house was abandoned, mail would not be delivered anymore. That night, I googled powers of attorney and how to use them. I went back the next day and showed my dad the pictures on my phone. He vowed to beat Shorty's butt, and then asked me to help more. I told him I would, but he'd have to sign power of attorney over to me. If he didn't, he could figure this stuff out by himself. He agreed, so I set about finding a lawyer who would drive to another state and do the paperwork in the nursing home. Bless that lawyer for being so good at his job, because all I did was tell him what I knew, and he put together a beautifully bulletproof POA. It was full of stuff I didn't even know I would need. He also filed the paperwork to revoke Shorty's POA. And now I'm unstoppable. I got to work the next morning. I didn't know how scorched the earth would be when I finished, and I didn't want Shorty or anyone from his prolific, inbred family trying to find me, so I made sure nothing I did had my name on it. I opened a Google account for my dad and got a Google number. I opened a P.O. box for him in his town. I put in a mail forwarding notice. I pulled his credit report. I took the POA to my dad's small-town bank, changed the address on his accounts, and got new account numbers. I requested copies of every transaction back to the day Shanty wife died. I had to go to the main branch, 2 hours from my house, the next day to pick the records up. I sat in the lobby all afternoon, going through the account. I cornered a service rep and got a crash course in his debits and deposits. This is when I figured out the extent of Shorty's staggering stupidity. My dad got about $5,000 a month in disability and Social Security every month. Twice a week, Shorty was going into a branch and withdrawing cash. All of the cash. For 13 months. And every time he did it, as the POA, he had to sign a form stating that he was acting on behalf of my dad, and that form was notarized by the bank. I went through every withdrawal and got the bank to confirm that every one of them was made by Shorty. Then I went to the house and called a locksmith. I knew it was bad, but I had no idea what was waiting for me there. He got the first door open, and the stench rolled out like a fog bank. We both gagged. 2 locks later, I was so embarrassed by what he had to see and smell, I gave him a $60 tip. And, with shiny new keys in hand, I called the cops. I told them I was POA for my dad, was checking on his house, and there were 3 vehicles that didn't belong to him. He asked me if I knew who they belonged to. I said no, and I wanted them towed.
What is the most satisfying revenge you've gotten on someone who crossed the line? My girlfriend gets pregnant. Do the right thing and stick by her, right? Wrong. We have the kid. She starts going out all the time and we'd occasionally get calls at the house by guys looking for her. I knew she was cheating but didn't really care. I was just there to make sure the kid was well taken care of. I get a new job out of state and hope that being there away from her bar friends will make us closer. Wrong again. She finds a new boyfriend, and quickly. Tries to hide it but she sucks at lying and hiding things. Again. No care for me. By now my kid and I are very bonded and even at 18 months it's obvious he doesn't care much for her either. Came home from a trip. Can't find my kid. Walk into my bedroom and there she and her boyfriend are having a nice little romp. Now this was in the days before cell phones and we lived on the 3rd floor so there was no escaping the bedroom without coming through the living room. I just said when you two are done I'll be in the living room and walked out. 3 hours and a lot of whispering later they emerge. Walk the guy to the parking lot and explain to him I'm not mad at him but be decent and don't be intimate in my house anymore and stay out of my beer. Go back upstairs and tell her to go get my son. The next day I get a new apartment and move out in 3 hours while she was at her boyfriend's house and took the kid. Day after I filed for divorce and got full custody which I won full after 2 years of legal wrangling. Granted child support was jack shit but it paid for beer for the next 18 years. I supported my kid. I never raised it on her because I'm a decent guy but it was fun rubbing it in her face when she got out of line that I spent it on frivolous stuff for myself and bought him all of his clothes, toys, food, etc., out of my own pocket. It always made her fume for a few days. Now I had purchased her a Toyota Accord before we moved that we shared but in the divorce, she wanted the car which I begrudgingly gave her. Then I moved back to my state, with my parents, and started life over. A few months go by and I start getting calls at work from the credit company demanding payment that was overdue. I explained numerous times that the vehicle was legally hers now and I would not be paying. Most of these guys were a-holes but one day a very low-key guy called and said look we're just trying to work something out because we can't locate her. Oh well, why didn't you say so? Here's where she's living. One have it on good authority she is home right now because her lazy ass is jobless. About 3 hours later my phone rings and it was her and she is pissed asking me if I told them where the car was because they just respond and towed it. Yep I say with a smug grin by the way my lawyer is paid off. How is yours doing? Click that was a great day.
What is the most heartbreaking thing your child has said to you? Please don't talk about babies, unless it's to say that you're having one. Look in her eyes and I'm reminded how much she is still hurting inside. I hope it's not too long before I get to see her excited little face again. I want to be able to talk about babies without making her sad.
What is the most heartbreaking thing a parent has said to you? I was 14 when I walked in on my mother having an affair with my father's best friend. I was so bewildered by it that I kinda emotionally shut down until I found the courage to tell my father. When I told him he simply said I know. He was a broken man, perhaps beyond repair of any kind, even being a man of faith as I am. I've never experienced that much pain inside someone else. And I never expected my father, my hero, my role model, to look at a 14-year-old kid who knew nothing outside of the hallways of high school, and simply break. Spiritually, mentally, and physically, I watched him every day destroy himself. But wasn't destruction, because he didn't care about it. It was torture. Eventually, it grew to the point where he was gone for days at a time, home long enough to get clothes for work. I'll give him that, despite his pain, he still provided for us. But the father figure, the leader of the family was gone. I stepped up and took care of my sisters as much as I could. One day though, he stumbled inside after 3 days of being gone, and I confronted him with absolute rage. What kind of man are you that you'd be so selfish as to not see your own kids are hurting just as much as you are? You don't think I don't want to escape this? You don't think your daughters aren't hurting too, Dad? He responded, don't worry about my daughters, Cameron. Worry about yourself. You're not even my son. I didn't respond. He was drunk, but I still could hear the conviction of the statement in his voice. I knew he was right. My mother had me before her and my father started dating way back when. He dropped out of school to help support me and my mother when my biological father left. He was 17 with the whole world ahead of him. He never did it for me. He did it for my mother, and I knew that. I always knew that. But I never considered it a true theory until he confirmed it. The saddest moment of my life thus far is the day my hero, my role model, the man I looked up to and strived to be a fraction of, disowned me. He apologized, of course, and I forgave him, but it didn't change the fact that what he said was indeed the truth and that he meant it. I don't look at my father as my father, I look at him as a shepherd really, and I am his sheep. Not born of him, or blood bound, but I am as much his as I am my mother's, and I'd follow him anywhere he leads me. What did your child say that broke your heart? My older daughter has always been extremely verbal, speaking her thoughts with full clarity from a very small age. When she was 4, I was offered the opportunity of a lifetime, a consulting job that would pay almost 3 times my regular salary. However, the job required me to visit client sites around the country for weeks on end. The lure of money overpowered my misgivings about being away from home, at least for a while. And the new job proved to be as busy as promised. I tried my best to come back home on weekends, but could not always make it, because many assignments were critical and the work days were long, the weekends short and the flights tedious. After one such long stretch of 3 weeks away, maybe not too long for us adults, but probably excruciating for a toddler waiting to see her dad, while on the phone, she tells me, "Daddy, you need to come home soon. I am beginning to forget your face and I have to go look at your pictures to remember you. What if I forget your voice? What will I do?" She sounded really worried, and I wanted to reach into the phone and hug her. Her little voice trembled as she said, "I am beginning to forget your face, Daddy." The realization that my daughter, my precious girl, might truly begin to forget me if I remained away spurred me into action. I could not hug her over the phone, so I did the next best thing. Within a few days I was back home, and in a few weeks changed my job to a regular one that paid much less, but had no travel involved. And ever since, I have been lucky to be able to choose jobs close to home. So many years later, whenever I faintly regret the money I could have made, I remember the sincere words of that little girl, voicing her inner fears, and I stay happy with my choice.
What is the most messed up thing your parents ever did? When I was 14, I was AR'd repeatedly by a neighborhood teenager. I would come home, beaten and bruised, and cry. I let my mother know and she told me to shut up. My father caught the guy in the act of another attack on me, told him to go home, and punished me. My teacher and friends knew what he would do and they would try and stop him. He pushed my teacher into a closet and knocked my friend down some steps while they were trying to protect me. I left a note for his mother and she let me know the next day it wasn't going to work. This abusive behavior went on for 10 months and my parents did nothing. I turned 15 and told my aunt what was going on and she was shocked. She brought it up to my parents and they told her to mind her own business. It all came to an end when I ended up hospitalized because of yet another beating. This last one I was pregnant and he beat me so badly, I miscarried. He was never punished. Now for the really messed up part, per your question. My parents never cared. 28 years later, I left my husband, not the same guy, after 26 years of marriage, and was sitting at my parents' dining room table and my dad wanted to know if that nice guy you used to date was available. I was flabbergasted. I replied, "You mean the piece of shit that used to beat and arm me until I almost died?" And get this. He said, "Yeah, him." Edit, I've been abused in every way you can imagine since age 4, I'm 57 now, up until the present day. I was conditioned to accept this treatment because I was brainwashed at a young age by my parents, and subsequently my ex-husband, and then reinforced by my current husband, that it was my fault and I need to be ashamed and remorseful for being that type of person that would allow years and years of molestation, beatings, verbal, financial, emotional, spiritual, and mental abuse by these people. Every time someone would stand up for me or protect me, I'd fall madly in love with them because I was so worn down that that was the only qualification in my book to being a good person, just protect me. The longer I was treated this way, the worse the treatment got because it was normal and a part of my life and I just accepted it. I have been hospitalized around 18 times for mental reasons and I've attempted unaliving as many times. The worst part of my life, though, if you can believe it, is others, who know nothing about my life or the strange dynamics involved, who have the nerve to say to me, "You're an idiot, dummy, moron, etc., for putting up with this for so long and allowing them to abuse you." How do I know how to react or what steps to take if I was never taught these things? I immersed myself into work, caring for my children, and others so I could mentally escape what my parents, siblings, spouses, or others were doing to me. Even today I live with a husband that has hurt me so badly, physically and emotionally. In the past he should be jailed, but yet, here I am, cleaning up after him, cooking for him, and being a good wife. My whole life has been a fantasy of escape. I've never been happy for more than a day, and it's unfair that I've been taking medication for 30 years to control my thoughts and make me forget the jerks all around me. Thanks for letting me vent.
What rare statistic are you a part of? Match.com told me I'm in the 1% of the population of people they can't match a partner to. Awesomeness. My hair started going gray at 13. By the time I was 23 it was completely white. I was born on the same date as another guy of the same name, and his mom had the same name as my mom. So the Social Security Department issued us both the same Social Security number. It took 18 years to figure out the mistake when I was denied a student loan because the other guy applied first. Also, his tax returns got denied for a while because I always submitted mine first. Myself and my dad both have had 3 sets of teeth. Baby teeth and then 2 sets of adult teeth. I was in foster care and graduated law school. Foster children are statistically less represented than any race group or disability group in college, let alone law school. When I was 15, I got the measles. My county hadn't seen it in over 30 years. And yes, I had my MMR vax. What's the most satisfying revenge you've gotten on an ex? My girlfriend of 9 months dumped me for a friend of mine. I was pretty upset about it, but I was willing to just get on with my life and never talk to her again. But, for some reason, she wouldn't leave me alone. She kept sending me Facebook messages, which I ignored. After a couple weeks of messages, I decided something needed to be done. I knew she had constructed a similar argument for why she had done this to me. So, I decided the most damage I could cause to her while also staying on the moral high ground was to show her exactly how bad a person she was. I wrote her a letter explaining to her what I thought her reasoning was and why it was completely flawed. I emailed her this and went to sleep. The next morning, I'm walking to work and checking my voicemail and I have 2 from her. The first one is her sounding pretty shaken up and asking me to call her back. In the second one, sent 5 minutes after the first, she was crying hysterically, begging me to call her back. I decide that I'm going to let her stew in that all day and call her back that evening when I was done with work. When I finally call her back, she just starts crying and apologizing. She asks if I was angry and I tell her that I have nothing to say to her. A few days later I got a handwritten letter in the mail that was a bunch of incoherent apologies, which I promptly burned. I didn't interact with her much after that, save for a few short interactions which I couldn't avoid. She confronted me at a party a year later. "Why won't you talk to me?" I told her I am not friends with people I don't respect as human beings. She proceeded to cry loudly in the bathroom. As a student, what was the most evil revenge you got on a bully? I used to spend my PE class time with a group of boys. Over time, they transformed into bullies, engaging in behavior like bullying other students and refusing to participate in activities. As a result, I found myself facing trouble for merely associating with them. In response, I decided to distance myself from them, but in doing so, I was of course labeled a square. The boys started to target me, pushing me during track and ganging up on me in sports. One day, I even discovered that my dessert had been stolen from my lunch. This went on for days and I had no idea where it was going. I then saw one of the dudes eating it while laughing at the lunch table and shooting me knowing glances. I could have easily beaten this kid down, but I was never into physical violence. So I thought. And I thought. And I schemed. And it hit me. The next week, I brought homemade brownies. Mondays were fine. Tuesdays were fine. Wednesdays were fine. Thursdays had a little surprise in them in the form of chocolate laxatives. While he was eating the brownie during lunch I approached him. I told him I knew he was stealing my desserts and he should stop. "What are you going to do about it?" was his reply to the laughs of his little cronies. I turned around and walked away. As we settled into our PE class that afternoon, it was time for calisthenics, jumping jacks, sit-ups, and stretching. Suddenly, a loud scream interrupted the routine. "Oh my god, what the heck," a girl creamed a few rows over from me. He pooped so much his entire gym shorts were soaked with brown liquid. It was going down his legs, it was filling his shoes. He tried to run out of the gym, but slipped in the poop water and got it all over his body and some on his face. He didn't come to school for the next 2 weeks.
What is the most satisfying revenge you have ever gotten? I was fooling around with a guy named Adam, and he wanted things between us to get more serious. I declined his offer as I had just gotten out of a serious relationship and didn't want to be anybody's girlfriend. In response, Adam decided to call my work to tell them that I was a total bum who smoked before work every day and stole money from the store. My manager Joe laughingly told me about the call when I came in for my shift at 3 p.m. I told him, "No man, she doesn't steal from us. We have cameras literally positioned over the top of the registers. And even if she does smoke, you're wasting your time because I don't care." I wasn't in trouble with my place of employment, but I was still pretty pissed off that Adam was trying to get me fired. Joe suggested that I call his work and do the same. He put the store phone in my hand and said, "Do it from here so he won't know it was you. Just dial 9 to call out." I considered my options. I really didn't want Adam to get fired. I was just about to put the phone back down on the receiver and forget the whole thing. Buzz. 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 A barrage of texts came to my cell phone. Each was more insulting and threatening than the next, and all from Adam. I dialed 9 and called the fast food place Adam worked at. I asked to speak to the manager on duty. "Hi," I said cheerfully, "I just wanted to let you know that your employees are really disrespectful and rude. After what happened yesterday, I won't be a customer of yours anymore. I'm so sorry, ma'am. If you could give me some more details, I'd love to see if we could resolve the situation. Can you tell me what happened?" The manager sounded very concerned. "Well, I came in yesterday and while I was ordering food the guy who took my order was kind of hitting on me. I tried to be nice about it, I really did. He asked for my phone number. I said I wasn't giving it to him because I'm already dating someone. He called me a lying, stuck-up bee. The manager listened to my whole story. Oh sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Can you describe him to me? Do you remember his name by chance? Well. I paused for dramatic effect. My manager Joe was standing next to the phone listening in. He was a short stocky guy with blonde hair. I'm pretty sure his name was Adam. I wasn't going to complain about it, but after I left I couldn't stop thinking about how rude he was. Then I started thinking that if he had been that way towards me there had to have been other women that he spoke to the same way, and I just couldn't hold it in anymore. So you decided to call in the complaint, the manager said. I totally understand. Now don't you worry about a thing. He won't be speaking to anybody else like that again. Thanks for calling it in, hun. The next day, I got a call from Adam complaining about how he had been fired from his job, and he knew that his baby mama had something to do with it. He had no idea I was the one responsible.
What was a time that the best revenge was just to let them ruin themselves? I had been dating Molly for about 6 months. The first 5 months were great. We started off slow, seeing each other once or twice a week for the first month. I realized I really liked this girl after our 4th date. She came back to my place that night and magic happened. After that, we started talking every day and I basically had zero desire to talk to any other woman. I deleted my dating apps, and cut contact with this other girl I had seen a couple of times right before I met Molly. I felt good that we had a good thing going. For the next 5 months, we went out every weekend spending almost every whole weekend together. So one night after a night out having food and seeing a comedy show, she's just in an awful mood. There were about 6 comedians performing one after the other. This first dude came up and had that whole beaches ain't shit blah 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 don't ever settle act. It got laughs but not from me. After his set immediately, my girlfriend leaned over and asked what that was all about. I just shrugged and said he thinks negatively of women. It's a comedy show so take it with a grain of salt. She just said I know but then the whole rest of the show she couldn't find anything funny. Fast forward to the second to last guy who had a funny story about his cheating ex but no hatred in his voice. He seemed over it and did not badmouth her at all. Molly wanted to leave after this and I didn't object because I could tell she was not enjoying herself. The car ride home was absolutely projecting at its finest. For 15 minutes I was hit with accusations of finding misogyny to be okay and that I'm probably cheating on her because all men do it. While I was driving I literally unlocked my phone telling her to look through my texts. Wasn't enough. I dropped her off and she said we're finished and that she had never seen this side of me before. I sat there shocked and at a loss for words. She got out and didn't turn back, just walked into her house. Not gonna lie. I cried on the drive home once I was out of her presence. It was that helpless feeling of thinking you did everything right but realizing it's not gonna work. A month passes by and I sort of am over it. I had reached out once being ignored and then the feelings dissipated gradually with no contact between us. Hindsight really is a beach. Why didn't I see through the BS sooner? Fast forward to a Friday night where I'm just hanging with a couple of buddies. I get a call from an unknown number. I ignore it. 5 minutes later a text, hey man I think you and I should talk. You know Molly, I saw her text between you two and I think you're gonna enjoy this. I could feel this grin coming across my face as I realized what was happening. I knew before he told me. I call him and he basically told me that she was playing both of us. Except this dude had a far worse end of the stick. Come to find out they've been married for 2 years and he was home in Brazil taking care of his dying mother for the last 6 months. He reassured me he was not mad at me and that he knew I was a good guy. I just felt bad for the guy at this point. Here's the best part, he then explains to me that this past weekend they drove about 6 hours out of town for a concert and weekend getaway. At the concert, her phone died and he went to use the bathroom. He slipped away, drove back home in his car and packed all her shit up out of their house. He then drove another 90 minutes to her parents' house explaining the whole situation and dropped all her shit off there. He blocked her number after she demanded he pay for her flight home. What a guy to reach out to me and share his delicious shenanigans.
Parents, what did your child say that hurt you more than they could ever imagine? My youngest son, who is now 10 years old, was talking to his mom one day and said something to her that made me feel like the worst piece of shit in the world and completely broke my heart. He was around 7 or 8 years old at the time when his mother and I decided to sign him up for soccer and baseball. Mom and I volunteered as coach for his soccer team and helped out as coaches in baseball. He didn't want to play, but we convinced him. We did this mainly because he's a very smart boy who gets straight A's, loved by every teacher he's had, but wasn't making friends easily. So I figured that sports would add some confidence, discipline and hopefully help him develop better social skills. I had coached my older kids when they played soccer, so I had a few years of experience with kids his age. But of course, like most parents, I was harder on him than the other kids on the team. So one day his mom calls me up to tell me he doesn't want to play anymore and I should take it easy on him. I immediately start cutting her off and telling her she needs to stop babying him so much and just let me do my job. My son is close to his mom and tends to open up to her more than he has ever done with me. During their talk she reassures him how he's doing a great job, how many friends he's made on the team and how they'll miss him if he decides to quit now. So why would you want to quit? Then my son tells her, Daddy thinks I'm no good and a big failure and he's disappointed. As soon as I heard those words, I said I had to call her back. I felt my eyes welt up and my throat tightened on me. I sat there while tears ran down my face and felt my heart break. It was old feelings coming back to me. I had become what at the time I despised, my father. It literally crushed me knowing that I made my son feel the way my parents made me feel while growing up. Even though I practically received every trophy I could in sports almost every season, it was never good enough for them and made me feel like a disappointment and unworthy. I carried that burden throughout my life and it even affected my relationships. I talked to my son the next day as he was laying in bed that morning and was a little nervous about a test he was going to take that day. So as we sat there talking for a bit, I looked him straight in his eyes and said, "You have no idea how proud I am of you. You're an amazing person who kicks ass on and off the field. You are the smartest person I know and I love you more than anything in this world." He replied, "You're the smartest person I know, Dad," and my heart melted. I realized that day that even though I may have unconditional love for my kids, I have to tell them and let them know how much I love them and how proud they make me. I have always protected my kids and made them feel safe as well as giving them constant affection. But sometimes it's not enough and I can't presume that they should know how much I love them and proud of them I am. It was what my young boy said that made me realize who I had become and made me see things differently so I could be a better and loving father in person. Growing up I never knew my father was proud of me until the day I was at the hospital after he suffered his second stroke. As I sat in his room I knew I had to ask him the one question that continued haunting me even as an adult. I asked, "Are you proud of me? Are you proud of the man I am?" He gently nodded while squeezing my hand, and I got the answer that I had been missing all my life. I'm glad I was able to make my peace with my father before he passed, especially when I know people that never made peace with their parents and how it burdens them to this day.
What did someone tell you that really hurt? 2 years into an okay relationship, my girlfriend had shown no signs of dissatisfaction and, while we had settled into a routine of work-school dating, we had fun. And one night, this happened. "GF, hey, we have to talk." Me, "We're going to be late for dinner with friends." GF, "Yeah, no. We're not going. I canceled. We need to talk." Me, "Okay. That sucks. What's wrong?" GF, "I met someone else. He's someone that came out of nowhere and he's everything I thought you were but you're not." Me, processing, "Oh. There's a lot to unpack there." GF, "I need to be honest with you and get it out. I've been unable to sleep so I need to get this out." Me, "Hold on. Can we start with the meeting someone else part?" GF, "It's not important." Me, "I disagree." GF, "I'm not happy. You're not happy. We've been drifting for a while, now." Me, "And yet this is the first conversation we're having about any of that." GF, Sorry, I'll just come out and say I had a better offer. Like I said, I know what I want." He's it. "You're not. I'm sorry." Me, "Have you been seeing him while we were still together?" GF, "I stopped thinking of us as together about a month ago." Me, "And that's when it started?" GF, sigh, "I don't want to get into that." Me, "You formed an emotional relationship with someone else and now you want out of ours. Okay." GF, "Are you mad?" Me, "I'm still in the processing phase of this. Shock is the best word. Nauseous? Sick and sad." GF, "I mean, you were just working and we do the same thing every weekend and it doesn't seem to be going anywhere and, Jay, I don't have time for a silly artist who doesn't want to get a real job. I thought you were going to be a big success, but it's been 2 years and you're nowhere." Me, "I'm still in college and I work. And I have had a relationship. We were." GF, "My point. While you were working, he and I went out to the river and we took a walk on the bridge together. He told me his life plan and he told me he wanted me in it. It was so romantic." Me, "This is so close to cheating there's no gap I can see between it and the line." GF, "I haven't slept with him." Me, "You kissed him, yes?" GF, pause. Me, "Uh-huh. Okay." GF, "So I'm ending this because I want to be with him. I just picked the wrong man to be with and I wasted 2 years. So, it's not like we're both hurt by this." At this point, something popped under my temple and I unleashed a string of expletives so vile and loud that it frightened her into another room. I left.